Thank you guys for joining. And this is it was funny because it actually snowed this morning and I was not expecting, I don't think anybody was expecting that necessarily today. So I was like, very good sign for thinking about winter upstate. And I have a lot of good questions that came in from the Instagram stories, but I figured I would, kind of kick off with just some of my thoughts essentially about what were some of the top things that I've learned and that we talk to clients about and that we've heard from people. Because I know that for me, well, let me just start again, just in case, somebody might watch this video. I'm Megan Brenwhite. I'm a real estate agent. I'm with the head of the Upstate real estate team at Keller Williams Realty Hudson Valley North. And we work with clients in about 10 counties, everything, roughly within 3 hours of New York City. That counts as sort of rural. And I moved here from Brooklyn about 4.5 years ago and have been coming up here for like shorter term visits a lot longer than that. And I know that what I was just going to say is that a lot when we first moved up here, it was kind of, it wasn't like haha funny, more like weird funny. We loved it. We were so excited to be here and it was so much fun. And then, wait, is Jen? I think Jen is like pinned for, oh, there we go. There I am. Somehow you were pinned in the screen for me, but what people were saying, like our friends in Brooklyn, they were like, well, like you like it now, but just wait until winter. You're going to like totally hate it in winter. And I was like, A, you're like a friggin' downer. And B, I don't know. I mean, I don't hate winter in New York City, and why would I hate it so much? And I think the thought really was that there's a bunch of things that are harder. One is like managing a house in winter, like having to deal with plowing and shoveling and like anything that could go wrong with your home in winter. And then just like trying to like not show, like I came to this like so quickly. So I'm just like, is there a part of my house that is not messy that I can use as a background? We're just doing this. That's fine. And then the other thing is that because it does get really dark and there's not like, there's definitely not like a ton of like nightlife, not like I was a big like nightlife person when I lived in the city. But it's like, real dark in winter here. Like there's not a lot of ambient light and there's not, some of the restaurants and shops closed, less so than they used to, but like, I mean, less so even in the past couple of years, but like our famous, favorite farmers market, Saunderskill, is closed for 4 months in winter and stuff like that happens. It just slows down a lot. And then driving, like I had never had a car before we moved up here. So like, driving in snow all the time and like would roads be plowed, that's a thing. And I think that what I also thought was that there wasn't, I don't ski a lot out here. We spent high school in Colorado and was able to ski and never got into East Coast skiing so much. So, I thought that like one of the main things I love about being up here, which is like being able to take walks in nature. It's like not a thing you can do all year. Anyways, the short answer here is that all that stuff is like not true. Like winter is awesome. It requires planning a little bit, so does every season here to some extent. And so does home ownership to some extent. So I think that that's like part of it. But I think that the difference for me between living here and like a, really rural setting is that the nature, the weather, the seasons have just much more of an impact on how you live on a day-to-day basis. And it's one of the things that I really, really love about it. Actually, I don't see it as a downside. It just is, like I could kind of live the same life in Brooklyn all year round. Like I could hop into an Uber, I could walk to the same restaurants, I could go to the same bars, I could, see my friends in kind of similar places. There would be summer things that would open up, or we'd be outside and you could be in the parks more and things, but it was like, it felt more kind of the same than it does up here. Yeah, not like dramatically different, but like it 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 was one of the things that really made a difference. So I think we can like kick it off actually with Marcy's question there about like if it gets dark at 5 p.m., when does it get dark in the summer? So let's start by saying that this is one of the great things is that in summer, yeah, it gets dark really late. Like so basically in summer, it is probably like 9 p.m. You're out till really, you can be out having sitting by a fire pit until like late into the evening before it even gets to be dusk, which is really awesome. And again, like obviously it's the same. We're not like on a different latitude or whatever from New York City, like barely. So it's the same, it's probably roughly the same time that things are happening. It's just the difference is you don't have street lights, you don't have like lights from shops and things, unless you're in a place like Kingston or Hudson or Newburgh or Beacon or like some of these bigger cities. So it's one of the things that is I don't know how to say it. It's like noticing even really subtle differences in the seasons to me is also one of the real advantage, the big wins. And so I guess that's one thing to think, whatever, like not to get like too esoteric here, but like one of the ways to win at winter is to really notice it, and really kind of be like, oh, like what's happening now? Like how is December different from February? Like what is happening with the plants? What's happening with the weather? What's happening with like the level of like water and like the creek behind me? Like what happens when it snows? So I think that that's one of the things that also has been really different for me from being a visitor, like an infrequent visitor, to being here full time, is knowing which are the first flowers that come up in spring. Like when you see actual snowdrops, like that's a real thing. You're like, oh, there are flowers that come up when they're still like, it's still pretty cold, or the first time it snows, it's just so like a proper snow here. It's like so magical. And everybody gets like, I feel like a lot of people get really excited. And I think that finding other people who share that excitement is part of what makes winter fun here. And that's probably like a general life message too. But like, there's one of the things about the weather that I love, and this is such a random thing, but I know I've mentioned it on Instagram, but Hudson Valley Weather is it's like their own weather company, and they have a Facebook page, and they have a website, they have an app, but these guys, like, I think it's two guys, and they get like super dorky about the weather, and they have like 9 microclimates for the Hudson Valley Catskill region, and it's legit. Like the microclimates are real. Like, so if you're in here, like if you look at the actual weather forecast and it's like, oh, there'll be 3 inches of snow. But then you look at the like Hudson Valley weather and they're like, oh, you're in the upper part of zone 6, and upper part of zone 6 is going to get like 10 inches of snow. I mean, we're not talking about little differences when there's actual weather. Like it's huge differences. So from the first time I learned this was my birthday's in December, and I had a birthday party, and I looked at AccuWeather and Dark Sky and weather.com, and I like cross-referenced everything, and I was like, not going to be a big deal, not going to be a big storm. I did not look at Hudson Valley weather. My friends started calling me and being like, hey, this looks pretty bad. I'm like, no, Dark Sky uses all the satellites. It knows exactly where I am. There were like 2 feet of snow, and nobody could come over basically for my party. So it was like, I learned, so Hudson Valley weather, that is like, I would say step number 1 to winning winter is like, look at hudsonvalleyweather.com, A, for information because it's useful. B, join the Facebook feed because nothing is more fun than like prior to the storm, people are talking about it. These guys are posting, like they'll post videos, they'll post like long, like weird, kind of like essays almost about what's going to happen. Then when the weather starts, people start posting what's happening outside their windows, and it's super fun. It feels just like a big region-wide bonding event. So it's like, oh, here in Wallkill, we got 3 inches of snow and it's still coming down. And oh, I'm in Livingston Manor and we have like just 2 inches, but it only started 10 minutes ago. And you get this feeling of sort of, I don't know, just like this big feeling of community, just just like kind of like when you're, I don't know how many of you are in the city, but like when you're in the city and it's a beautiful snowstorm and you go out on the street and it's all quiet, it's like that, but everybody's in their homes and talking on Facebook at hudsonvalleyweather.com. Go figure. So that's one thing. I think that I can already say that like they clear the roads in like 5 seconds here. So that's just a non-issue. Like I kept thinking like, wait, Lacey's like making a face because actually the one place that doesn't happen is Kingston is not so good about that. So I can read her mind over there, but like in general, except for in like the cities and more dense areas, like actually like the roads are cleared. Like so they're clearing them all night. They're sanding them and salting them. Like it is not a problem. Like they know that people have to get to work or have to, go places. So it is pretty damn rare that there is snow that like is so bad that like you can't go out. Like it's just fine. So that was one of my big concerns. So it's like you're going to be able to drive. I think that like what I've heard is, that getting snow tires is one of the best things you can do to prepare for any winter driving. So even more than having all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, apparently snow tires are like really a big deal in terms of actual safety. So I think that that's something to think about. If you don't have a car and you're thinking about living up here, I would 100% buy a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Like there's a reason there's a million Subarus here. It's a thing. And Volvos and other cars for like, that people are used to dealing with snow. Because that is the one place where, I've only actually had one time where I almost got into an accident, and it was driving over the mountain. So I was driving over the gunks on 4455, which is kind of from New Paltz to Kerhonkson. And it was snowing, it had been snowing, and it had built up. And I had to get over the mountain. So I just was driving and I skidded out. And, luckily there wasn't a car coming towards me on the other lane. Otherwise it would have been an accident. But, I think that I was a super, like did not have a car till we moved up here. I had my license. I got my license at 16 in Colorado and like just never drove. And I graduated high school early, so I didn't have really time to do stuff, and then never lived anywhere I needed a car. So, one thing for anybody who's thinking about that, I think the snow and the darkness were things I had to contend with as a newer driver up here at first. So, I wasn't used to driving in the dark. I wasn't used to driving, driving in the snow was a little bit better, but I had to get used to it, and I think that was just a thing. You have to get used to some things. Like you have to do it a bunch of times till you're comfortable with it. And I actually did some driving lessons when I came up here, and that was really helpful. That really built my confidence. So that's something to think about. And I would definitely think about that. Like if you're living up here or thinking about buying a place up here and you're like not a confident driver and then get like extra worried in the dark or winter, I think getting a driving lesson to talk about how to drive in winter and like what to do if you start skidding out and what to do when it's dark. Like, I think that would be really awesome. So I would say that would be a way to help build your confidence and, kind of win at winter. So oh my God, sorry, I just was looking at one of the questions, which is awesome. What snowplow protocol? What do I do so my house doesn't die? I looked at it first thinking it was related to snowplow. It is. So here's like a couple other like we'll stay on the snowplow driving thing for a second. If you have a house on a private road here, that will not be plowed by the town. So we have our house is on a private road here, and we have to have some houses have what's called a road maintenance agreement. Some roads do, a lot of ones don't. Like a lot of it's just done informally. So one of the things that'll happen is the person at the end of the road has to plow it. Otherwise they can't leave, right? So you kind of don't, if you are the person at the end of the road and your road doesn't have a road maintenance agreement, I would just assume like you're paying for the whole thing and then be pleasantly surprised if other people chip in. I think generally people do. I know our road, like 3/4 of people chip into it. But that means that, I have like 3 little layers of plow people who have to come. So we have the town roads, which are fine. And then we have our private road, which is also fine. That guy always comes. And then we have to have someone plow our driveway so we can actually get out of our driveway to get to the private road, to get to the town road. That guy less good. We've had to switch a few times to find different snowplow people. So what I can say also is just that it costs about, I think for us, it's like, I want to say it's $30 or $40 every time he comes. It depends on the length of the driveway. I heard one recently with a really long driveway that was like $140 every time the plow guy comes out because it's super long. Something to think about in terms of the expense for the house. And they will come out if it's 3 inches, usually it's 3 inches or more of snow, they come out. So if it snows 4 inches and then keeps snowing, they might come out, 3 times over the course of a couple of days. So that means it's not $40, it's $120. So maybe one of the ways to win at winter is actually to budget appropriately, to know that like there are some expenses that are specific to summer. So that would be like if you use air conditioning, if you have a pool, if there's special stuff you want to do with your garden, lawn maintenance, that's all summer stuff. And in winter, the big expenses are heating. I mean, it's like heating is the big expense, and then plow guys. And that's basically, those are the two. So I think knowing what those costs are, because the first time also that I got a heating bill that was like, I don't know, like $700 for a month or something, I almost like died, and I was just like, oh my God. And then I had to like, reach deep within and go, okay, what is this like actually in the whole year? If you divided it by the whole year, is this okay? And it's like, okay, it is. It's nothing more than I expected. And there are a couple things I would say about that, because this is one of the things I wanted to talk about is, oh my God, is this like a Marcy only comment category? Marcy Y says we go through so much wood. Marcy I is asking, is natural gas or oil more popular there? So I'll start by saying that like how efficient your house is and how much it'll cost to heat it. We just were talking about this with clients yesterday, is like largely dependent on the size of the home and how well insulated it is and the quality of the windows. Size of the home, how well insulated, and the quality of the windows. Those 3 things make a huge difference. So you could have a 4,000 square foot home with amazing insulation and great windows that will cost the same to heat as a 1,000 square foot home with like bad insulation and bad windows. Obviously, the other thing, and this is why, when people talk to us about like, oh, when you're like, we want to get the average utilities, can we see some utility bills from people? Utility bills are pretty bad way to try and figure out how much things will cost, unfortunately. I mean, you can get them, but you would then need a couple other pieces of information. One is at least a couple other. One is how often did they use the house? So often people will ask us, like buyers agents will ask us on the listing side and say, hey, we want to see utility bills. We say, great, here they are. Look, they only paid $100 all winter for electricity, but it's because like they used it one weekend. We'll say that, but it's like, it's not even like something you can extrapolate, because also if you're heating your house from freezing cold to warm, it takes a ton of energy. If it just stays kind of warm the whole winter, that's way more efficient. The other thing is that some people are weird, like not weird, let's just say some people have different opinions on how warm they want the home to be, right? Like my husband, in his perfect world, we would keep everything at 76. Like it makes me want to die. Like it's so hot. Like it's crazy. Like he keeps calling me his dad because I go around like turning the thermostats down. Not because I'm like trying to save money frantically, although also that, but it's just like, dude, it's weird to wear like a t-shirt and like shorts in the middle of winter. Like that's weird in your house, I think. So if you had someone like Rob, you got the utility bills from him, they would be like ridiculous. If you got the utility bills from me, they would be like way more normal. So, you got to figure out who's more normal. So those are a couple of things that are pretty important. And in terms of oil, so it's not, I think it's mostly not natural gas, it's propane. So it's usually propane or oil. And there are some things with electric heat. We have a house that's heated we have a house that's heated with electric heat and a propane stove in Willowy Muck in Sullivan County. And that is really efficient. So it's like and you see actually a fair number of houses with a mixture of things. Particularly, this gets back to Marcy's point with wood. So wood is generally supplemental heat, but what I can say is that when we're using our wood stove, we don't, like, the heat never kicks on. Never. It's totally warm. And that is another point that I wanted to make today, which is that, like, wood stoves are about 100 billion times more efficient in terms of heating a home than a fireplace. And it's because you have, like, a fireplace is like an open fire with like a lot of air and stuff. The wood stove is it's cast iron, so it's like keeping all the heat in, and it's radiating heat from the sides, and there's usually a fan to keep it going. And then here we turn our overhead fans on also, so we do the overhead fans in winter to push the air down. Heat rises, yes. So in winter we switch the direction of the fans. So when we're running the wood stove, we run the fan on the wood stove, and then we turn our little fans on above. This house is like toast-y. Yeah, and electric heat and using the wood stove is pretty great. So, and if you're only using the house every couple of weeks in winter, what can you do to reduce energy usage and costs? It's Kristen. So, you can turn it down. You can turn down the heat to like the low 50s. That is a thing. Like, so as long as it's like, I've heard most people say like you want to keep it at like 53, 52, whatever, just to like keep things warm enough. It depends on where your pipes are a little bit, and like if the pipes are insulated. Because there are two things you're trying to do when you're not using your home. Like, one is to not have your pipes freeze, because that's horrible. And two is to keep it, warm, so it doesn't take like 15 days to heat up when you come back. I'll go back to the frozen pipes, but the one form of heating that takes a long time to heat up is radiant heat. So radiant heat can take like a day to basically heat the entire home. And once you get it to that temperature, so radiant heat people are not the ones who like jack up the heat to 75, 6 hours before they're coming and then turn it down. Like you bring it up and then you leave it there for a while. For sure, one of the things to like, when at winter, if you're not using the house that frequently, would be if you can get a Nest thermostat or any of the digital thermostats, so that you can like see what's going on there. Like if all of a sudden it's 32 degrees in your house, like you got a problem and you can like deal with it, but also you can get it like nice and toasty before you arrive, which is awesome. And then if you forget to turn the heat off when you leave, you can turn the heat off. So I do think it's good to say that, like, I'm glad that Andrea mentioned that, like, electric heat, people I think have a sense that it's like the devil, but it's not. Like there are actually some really efficient electric heaters that can work really well, particularly with smaller homes. And there are another ones that are called Renai that are kerosene that they often use. You probably would recognize this. They look like big ugly beige boxes kind of, and they're often used if you have like an art studio or a I don't know, like a garage that's being used for something else, like, but I've seen them used in homes too. So they basically, it's like this big box that goes right to the outside of the house, and you're actually use kerosene generally. I think that's what they mostly use. And those things like will heat a place in like 4 seconds, but they ain't cute. You know what I'm saying? They're not so cute. When we're burning wood, this house here is 1,700 square feet. And when we are burning wood consistently, we use about 3 cords of wood in the winter. So that was one of the things I wanted to tell you. So wood, another topic all to itself. So one of the ways to win at winter is like not to wait until October to order your wood. Like you want to order wood in spring because if the person you're ordering it from is, let's just say you can hedge your bets. If they say it's nice, dry, aged wood, then great. Maybe it is. And maybe you get it in October and it burns beautifully. But otherwise, it'd be good to have a nice 6 months if it's sitting outside all summer and really getting like nice and like ready to burn for the winter. If you burn wood if you have wood that is too green, that's too wet, it just doesn't burn very well. It like puts, apparently, I think it puts more like creosote in your chimney also. It's annoying to light. So there's a bunch of things like that. So having a good wood supplier, if you have a wood stove or a fireplace, is super important. And that's where like, you know, we are like, that's one of the questions we get asked a lot for people with new homes. And so we try and find out from the seller who they used and try and like pass that information on. Jen actually asked me yesterday in a new app that's going to be launched in the next couple of weeks that we have about eco bricks. So eco bricks are, they're just like, they're little bricks made out of sawdust. That's what it looks like. And ours are, the brand is called Bio Brick, and they're basically it's the sawdust. It's everything from like lumber yards and stuff. So it's using waste and they squish it together to make a little brick. And supposedly it burns cleaner. It's less like, you know, stuff in the air for you to be breathing. There's not as much ashes afterwards. They're really, really, really easy to burn. So you barely need a fire lighter. So we always mix regular wood, like logs, with because the eco bricks are not like cute to burn. Like they're just like bricks. So we kind of like get a big fire going and then we can throw a bunch of eco bricks on. We start with some of the eco bricks. That is really good. And again, like just like I barely knew how to drive when I moved up here, I also did not know how to deal with a wood stove. So I had my sister's wife actually gave me like a tutorial and I was like, whoa, hashtag doing it wrong up until now. Because a fireplace, you know, one of the things, a fireplace you're used to, you know, like if you're having like the brownies or whatever, you know, you 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 kind of make it a pyramid and you have a bunch of air and like that's what you want. But a wood stove, what's cool about it, when you go to bed at night, you shove it with as full of as much fuel as possible to slow down the burn and to give it fuel. And then you shut the doors and turn it really low. And basically it burns all night. And that is winning a winter to me. So when I have my wood stove going consistently, and I'm like, I just like, all I have to do is like shove a bunch of, you know, stuff into it at night, shut the doors. I wake up in the morning and I stir it up a little bit, let some air get on it. There are enough embers that I can just throw new logs on. So I remember, you know, when the first year we moved here, after I figured that out, like, I think I went 2 months without lighting the stove, literally. Cause it was just like, when I would remember, I'd throw a couple logs, I'd do whatever, or my husband would. It was like zero hassle, like nothing. And we just constantly had this beautiful fire going and it was awesome. So a pellet stove is, actually, I think that pellets are like the baby versions of the eco bricks. I think they're Jen saying, yeah, they're the same thing. It's like little sawdust things. So pellet stoves are, it's basically like, you'll see them, they look kind of bigger and boxier, I would say, than some stoves. And you take these huge bags, they're usually 30 pounds of pellets, and you throw the pellets into the hopper at the top, and then the pellets are sitting there. And then when the stove needs more fuel, it like drops down the pellets like a coffee grinder almost. Like it just sort of like opens up and the pellets drop and it keeps burning. It looks, I mean, to me, it always looks like a gas stove or something. Like the flames, like it's not like a pretty, you know, wood stove with like dancing flames, but it's great heat. It's super easy. It's super efficient. It's definitely one of the warmest things. I would say that most people who are locals, the locals are like from here, like a lot of people have pellet stoves because it is one of the most efficient ways to heat a home and just easy peasy. You don't ever think about it. Because if you think about it, you can leave, you can fill your little hopper up and then it like, you're not having to throw more stuff in, it throws more stuff in. So looking at my other questions here, I know I wanted to talk about the heating. Oh, right. So to get back to, you know, gas and oil, basically there's not really a difference between the two necessarily, in terms of like, oh, one is way better, or one is worse. Like it depends on the price that year. So you can't like I would say it doesn't make any, and they're pretty evenly divided here. So it doesn't make any sense to be like, oh, I want a house with like only propane. I hate gas or I hate oil. They're kind of like, depending on the price of each of them, it doesn't make a difference. What I'll also say is that one of the definite ways to win at winter is to buy your fuel in advance, because it can be like 30% or more cheaper if you buy it in advance. This is something I forget almost every year, and I just like want to kick myself. So say, if you get the fire in spring and then you get to winter or you get to like summer, that's when the fuel company will start to send out things about like, do you want to prepay for all your fuel? And if you can, it is much less expensive. The other thing that energy companies will do up here is not, is like I forget what they call it, but it basically is like you pay the same amount every month for the whole year. So they essentially figure out how much you're going to pay in winter and then divide it up also in the summer. So that you don't get like a $700 bill in winter for a month and then like $50 in summer. So that's another kind of way of dealing with the payments that I've seen a lot of companies do. And just FYI, side note, if you're like, well, I have to have gas because I want a gas stove. I love cooking with gas. That is like the easiest thing to change here. It's so easy. So, we've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't look at that house because it's an electric stove. These are not apartments. Like you do not have to worry about like a gas line going through somebody's home below you or above you. You just have to get a gas line through your basement or out the side of your house. The only thing I would say is that if you get something, if you're only using, so a lot of times people who have oil still use propane for their dryer. I don't know why, but the drying machine, and then also their stove. So if you have a little baby propane tank, that can be that is much more expensive. So they charge you a lot more per gallon. I don't know if prepaying for fuel is more of a country thing versus a city thing. I don't know. I mean, I never lived in a house outside of here, but I would think, when we just moved back to Kerhonkson from Kingston and we prepaid for fuel. It's the same thing. It's just like, it's if you can afford it thing, I think mostly is like, if you have the money in advance or can pay that, then it's cheaper. But, a lot of people don't have that. So we were lucky with that. Here's an interesting, this is a good question. So, cause I'm like, fireplace, wood stove. So someone asked how hard is it to install a fireplace if a home doesn't have one? That's a great question, because that's another thing that I think a lot of people, when they're looking for a house, put that as like a deal breaker thing. Like if it doesn't have a fireplace or a wood stove, like I'm not going to look at it. It's pretty damn easy, actually. It is. So it's the, putting in a wood stove is way easier than putting in a fireplace with like a whole surround and everything. The other thing to consider if you're adding it, so I would say the cost, like the last place we lived, we looked up our wood stove and someone had bought it on Amazon for like, I think it was like $500. It is not a great wood stove. It's pretty flimsy. So like not necessarily what I would buy, but if you paid like whatever, like let's just say you paid $500 for your wood stove and then it maybe costs, I don't know, like maybe $1,000 to install. I can't even imagine it'd be that much. They basically need to have, you need to have something like stone underneath it, and you need to have the wood stove pipe has to go out, and that's it. Like you're not building a chimney. So the other thing to really, really, really think about, I think, are the propane stoves. So I will say that like a nicer wood stove that's like Yotul is one of the brands I really love, JOTUL, or Morso, MORSO. Again, all the Scandies, of course, but also Wittis, beautiful. I mean, those ones, when you get to those kinds, the stoves themselves can cost a couple $1,000s. But I will say, we were just talking about this recently, you can often find cool vintage wood stoves. So looking at like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or this new app that may or may not be coming from our team very shortly, you can definitely find people, because people, get rid of them. And sometimes the vintage ones are so freaking cute with like lumberjacks and little pine trees. And I know one of them, I think it might even be, I think it's more so, has like squirrels, like these squirrels that are on the cast iron. They're adorable. But I would also say to think about a propane stove. We have one in our place in near Livingston Manor, and it's amazing. And that is more expensive. So that was probably $6,000 or $7,000 to buy the stove and to have it installed with the gas lines and everything else. But that thing heats that whole house and is super efficient, like wildly ridiculously efficient. And it's on a thermostat. So it's like that's like the, if you want to rent your house out ever option, that I would strongly suggest you look into, because some places are, I guess this is a good like how to win at winter tip also, is like if you're renting your house out in winter, like have a pretty good game plan if you do have a stove and you're like letting people use it who don't know how to use a stove. So some towns are considering, I know where we are, they're considering not allowing Airbnbs to have wood stoves and fireplaces, or not allowing them to be used. Maybe even have them. I can't remember the exact wording, but the reason is because the fire department was getting so many calls from people doing short-term rentals and like doing dumb stuff. So having a propane stove gives you a lot of the ambiance of it and the warmth of it without people, bursting your house into flames. So there's that. Okay. So what additional maintenance issues come up for upstate New York homeowners in the winter? That's something that I've been like thinking a lot about. So, one of the things, well, I meant to mention this about pipes freezing. So if you're leaving your house, there's a few things that people do if you're going to be gone for a few days or whatever. Often what people will do is they'll turn off their water pump. So most homes up here that we deal with have a well that's like a well and septic. It's not on city water. So if you have a well, the water, like there's a well pump that's getting the water up from the well. So you basically turn that off, and then they basically drain the water from the house. You just like run the taps out. So essentially there's no water in the pipes and no water can come up. So your pipes cannot freeze if you do that, because there's no water in it. That's like the safest. Other people will leave water, but they'll put like, anti-freeze in it, or like other things. Even just turning the well pump off is already a pretty awesome thing, because what will happen if you don't is, let's say a pipe bursts because it freezes and the well pump is still active, it'll just keep putting, and then it thaws and puts more water in, then the water is going to just keep coming out where it burst. So it's like there's a bunch of things like that are around water that I would say the best thing to do would be to talk to, when you're if you don't own a house yet and talk to an inspector, when the inspector is at the house, take 2 seconds and say, hey, could you tell me what you would do to winterize this house? This specific house, because they are going to have like different things. And that's the moment where they'll go, oh, this is your well pump switch. You could just turn it off. Or, I see they have a spigot here so that you could drain the pipes. Or, like whatever, whatever that is. Like there's going to be some specific things for each house that I think is really good to ask about. And, one of the things that is less obvious maybe is if you have water, like if you have water somewhere else away from your house, like we have a spigot that's out in our garden. There's a pipe that goes below the ground that goes all the way to that house, that goes all the way to that spigot. We have to turn that one off and drain it from inside the house before winter, which we only learned because it froze and then burst and then caused problems with, other things with our house. So, but that's easy. Now we like know that. It's like, You go once in the winter, go down, and ours is just a crawl space. We go into our crawl space. We turn this, like, it's not even turning thing. It's just like a, like a handle. So we just turn the handle off and then it's fine. And then we turn the handle off and then we go to the spigot and run the water until there's no water coming out of it. So then it's completely drained. And then in spring, when we want to use that spigot again to water things, we just turn it back on. No big deal. The other things that we definitely try and do is have our gutters cleaned. I really believe in having regular exterminators come all year round, because all year round, different stuff is happening. So we just have a contract with a local company called Pest Masters. They were here yesterday and they were like, hey, is there anything new happening? And I was like, well, I hear something slightly disturbing in my roof. And so he went around and he looked and he's like, oh, it looks like you probably have a red squirrel like living in your ceiling, which is super dangerous. So when you have rodents in your house, anywhere that there's wires, they can chew the little wires and they can they can spark, they can cause a fire. So to me, that's like one of the ways to not just win at winter, but like win at like owning a house upstate ever, or any house anywhere in nature, is to have a regular contract with an extermination company. Just have them come out, do their thing, and then they can stop problems before they start. Oh, so yeah, the dewinterization. I saw that may have been, oh yeah, that is you that asked them the stories too about that. So the problems with getting it dewinterized for the inspection. So the sellers should pay for that. The buyer generally wouldn't pay for that. Yeah, here we go. Oh, I just put Pester Masters. Pest Masters. And I put Pester Masters in Kingston's. This is why I shouldn't write Pest Masters in Kingston. So the problem with dewinterizing a house, so if the house has been winterized, they've turned the water off, they've drained the pipes, all that stuff is shut down. Sometimes when you turn the water back on, like any leak or anything like that will like immediately become evident. So we've had homes that are estate sales, for example, that are winterized and vacant, where they just don't want to dewinterize it, because it can be, depending on the size of the home, it can be kind of expensive to like go through the full on, like I'm talking about like if you go for a weekend, what you do, but the full on, like we're leaving this house vacant for like 6 months that's a different kettle of fish. So what we've done sometimes is, done this a couple of times, is had it in the contract that it has to be dewinterized like 4 weeks prior to closing. And then we have to have a notice from that plumber that everything's okay. And then the seller's paid to have the inspector come back again, because they're the ones who didn't want to dewinterize it at the times, So generally it's not something a buyer should have to pay for. So it's not and again, depending on how the house is winterized, it could literally, to dewinterize it could literally just be as much as flipping on the switch to turn the water back on. That's what it is 99% of the time. So that's it. It's just that you can't do it an inspector can't do that, because then they take on the legal liability of if the water comes out, blah, blah, blah. So you have to have like a plumber, or the owner can go in and do it. So I do have some things, and I'm, looking at the time, because I know I started a little bit late too, and we can certainly stay longer, but I wanted to cover a little bit of so that's it. So basically the house thing, the only other thing I would say is like every house has different things. Like we always take our screens down and put them in the shed so that we can have nice clear views all winter. You don't have to do that. We take out our air conditioning. Like if there's any air conditioning units, you can take those out. I know people who are really efficient, and they'll go through and they'll really check for drafts. And then if they have like old windows, you can kind of buy these little kits where you put like plastic around the window, and then use like a hair dryer. And then it really like makes a good barrier around the window, because when it's cold, the drafts can be a real bitch. So that's another thing. The other thing I would say is to just get a good shovel. As dumb as that sounds, like trying to shovel snow with a shitty shovel is like, it's a world of difference. And I'm not talking about like a platinum, weird shovel, but we got like a shovel that like the handle's more like it's more bent. So you kind of gives you some more leverage. And that is like, it is literally 1,000 times easier than our like caca shovel, than the first one that we had. And I've seen people who get things that aren't, they're not there's snow blowers, which you can get, which are kind of expensive, but those are super efficient. The medium way, it's called like a electric shovel or something. It's like a tiny baby snow blower. And those are only a couple $100, and you can get those, and just like, it sort of like powers your little shoveling, which is cool. So for sure in winter, we just have like, we have like a little bucket of salt, next to the door, and a little bucket of sand. And we have all that stuff just like ready to go, so we don't have to think about it. And the only other thing I would say that is important is to like figure out what the heck you're doing with your shoes, because wet shoes, especially if they have salt on them, on wood floors, like wreck the floors pretty darn quickly. So having like a mat, and then like a little boot tray, or like little boot baskets, or whatever, like that kind of stuff is really like weirdly important. Yeah. And then in terms of like the best winter hikes and stuff, that was another one of the questions. Like, I mean, the truth is, like, I guess this is the other point. What's that phrase? It's like, there's no bad weather, there's only bad clothing or something. I think there's a phrase like that. It's basically like, if you're dressed appropriately, like you can be on winter the whole time here. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, and I always bring myself back to the fact that people ski all winter. Like people are out in snowstorms when it's cold. And so you can do that even for like a dog walk, or like a stroll with a friend. It doesn't have to be some like big, massive winter time activity. But it was one of the Oprah's picks this winter. It's not available till next year, so whatever. But it's like the Land's End, oh my God, I meant to write it down. Expedition jacket, Land's End Down Expedition jacket. And it is unbelievably warm. And I think it's super cute. And I think they are mostly sold out until, they might have new stock now, but they were sold out for a little bit. And I got it on like a 60% off sale at Land's End. It was $140. And my friend and I have been walking in weather that's like 15 degrees. And I'm like, my face is cold. Like other parts of me are cold, but the part of me that's covered by that jacket, warm and toasty. So Land's End. Oh yeah, the Land's End Stadium coat. That's the other one that people love. So that one gets a ton of props. So this is the Expedition Parka. And I also got some warm boots from Land's End, just because I was there buying that jacket. And the boots were also not that expensive because I got them on a sale, but they have like, I feel like they're cute enough to wear to town if it's just like, I get a cup of coffee if it's like just cold out. But they have like pretty good soles and stuff. So if I'm walking my dog in any kind of weather, I feel really good. Like my feet are toasty, they feel really great. And then I have my my little long underwear, get that going on. And I think that's a pretty big deal, because if you can enjoy that outside all winter long here, then then I feel like you've totally won, and I know there are like a lot of people who are super like athletic and whatever, and are like, what the hell? Of course, I run in like 10-degree weather all year round. But I can just tell you, as someone who's not like that, like I can still have a lazy stroll with my dog and enjoy nature and stay warm. So that's it. But I had to like get my head around the fact that like if it was snowing or if it was 20 degrees, I could still go do something. And all of the hikes are the best hikes in winter. That's the other thing I would say, because they're less busy. So in summer and fall, things are, especially this year with the pandemic, things were really busy, and it was really hard to go to places like Minnewaska, Mohonk Preserve. And now everything's like pretty chill. So I go a lot on the rail trails in winter. Just because it's like, they're flat, and I'm not trying to like scramble on a rock that might get icy, and there are rail trails everywhere. So just like wherever you are, just type in rail trail, and it's some former rail track that's been converted to a trail. And the nice things about those too is that those are the kind of walkways that you can usually walk like 2 or 3 people in a row. So if you have your little pod and you want to walk together, you don't have to like single file on something. So the rail trails, I think, are really a huge, awesome asset. Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is that, like, for me, like, this is just like I guess it is sort of like, instead of fighting it, you know, it's just sort of more embracing it. So like we legit, like I will go to sleep at like 9 o'clock in winter, like asleep, which is bizarre, you know, and unless I like stay up watching TV or like something, because it's like pitch black, stars in the sky at like 5 p.m. So if that's happening, so we'll have dinner at like 6 p.m. most of the time in winter. And that is like way earlier than I used to have dinner, but it feels right. It feels normal. And then when I wake up in the morning, it's still like it's pretty light out now at like 7 a.m. So I can go for like a walk or something before work starts, which I really like. So that schedule, I think one of the coolest things is allowing, if you can, like with all of your family and work schedules and whatever else, like for me, it's been really cool to like allow my personal schedule to really adjust with the seasons. So in summer, you know, I think I just sleep less probably because I get up earlier and I stay up way later, you know, and it like feels fine and it feels like great. And I'm like doing stuff more. And in winter, it's like, yeah, it's like, I want to put that stew on the stove at like 2 o'clock and like have it ready to go, you know, and have like, because that's what's so awesome. Like I work from home most of the time, you know, so I can have my fire going. I can have my stew bubbling on the stove, which needs almost no attention. I can be making like nice cups of tea for myself. And I'm like cozy all day, every day. You know, like that's like my goal pretty much. Just like, and then I got, oh my God, I'll show you guys these things. Ugh. Okay, so check this out. This is from a company called Love Lamb. Love Lamb. They're out, I think it's in Delaware County, but it's somewhere near here. So this is like obviously a sheepskin, right? So you're all like, oh yeah, we've seen a sheepskin, like we've seen every Scandinavian magazine. But it's a humane one. Look at that. It's felt. So she actually takes the fiber and felts it on, like she puts it onto felt. So this is, there's Love Lamb. Oh, it's upside down. So like, you know, like in winter, I just like add more of these things and I have these things all around. Like I buy, this is literally from a sheep named Squid. It is his whole pelt and Squid's going to make another pelt in the spring because Squid is not dead because they just shaved him off and felted it onto this thing. So that's like one of the awesomest things. And I think that like I've been drinking tea from a place called Soul Fire Farm in Kingston. That's like holy basil and like anise and whatever. And it still is like, I think it's still such a great time to like find more and more and more local things that are awesome for winter. Immuneshine. I'm going to type that one down. Immuneshine is this company in Hurley that makes these amazing ginger lemon syrups. And it's basically ginger, lemon, and honey, but then with other flavors. And you can add it in winter, you can add it to hot water and make like a really lovely like drink with like elderberry and ginger and lemon, or you can add it to cocktails, you can add it to seltzer. But like I just like hit up this, you know. Yeah. Well, you know what? The other thing is I lived in Germany for like almost 3.5 years and they are like super, I know Hygge became a thing, Scandinavian. The German word Gemütlichkeit is like less attractive and easy and easy to spell, but like they do winter right. Like there, when I lived in Berlin, like it was pitch black at like 3:30. Like there was no talk of our wild and extravagant dark at 5 o'clock lifestyle. It was like dark, dark. And they just like lit candles all the time. They, you know, they really made an effort to make it really cozy. And I think that, you know, there's so many amazing candle makers here. So it's like I go to local shops and I'll pick up a candle from somebody and I can support a local company. Then I'll go to Applestone, which is like my favorite meat vending machine, whatever. And yeah, I think, oh my gosh, meeting in person when outside opens up. I know. Well, you know, I think that COVID, like, this is the thing is like, I think we've all had to get, or like, hopefully, like, again, this is a somewhat privileged thing to say, but like, I'm glad that I have a home. I'm glad that I've been able to make my home more comfortable this year because we're all spending more time in our homes. And that's true. And I do think like, and I am seeing, and I think that one of the things this year, that's why I was like, I'm getting that jacket, I'm getting the boots, I'm getting the mittens, I'm getting everything, because the only way I'm seeing friends right now is outside and it's cold. So I just got like a great chimenea. I'm going to type that down. Jamie's Badass Chimeneas. So, I mean, when it's like 20 degrees, I don't want to like hang out on my deck with like a chimenea going, but if it's like 35, I'll do that. So, I'll still go on walks with friends. I'll still go, like, we'll go and people have come over and we'll sit outside and like eat a meal together or like have a glass of like mulled wine or something. So that is a way where I'm just like, this year, forget it. I'm not letting any cold weather bum me out too much. So I'm just going to like get prepared for it so I can like see people. Yeah. So does anybody have any other, obviously also there's like skiing and all, there's all kind of other things if you want to do like proper like winter sports, that is absolutely available as well. Is there anything, does anybody have any questions or any other concerns or burning issues? Yeah, I think that like, I don't know. I mean, I think that this year has actually been, maybe that's even why I thought about this topic, is that there's like the practical stuff, like the, how do you winterize your house and things, but it's really like I don't know, it's like the more, yeah, again, like the bigger picture of like, how do you embrace that it's cold right now, and that it's dark early? Like, how can you embrace it instead of fight it? And I think that's one of the pretty cool things about being in nature. So that's it. If you have any other questions, obviously you can always like DM me on Instagram. Again, there may or may not be an announcement in the next 1 to 2 weeks about another app where you could ask questions. We're working out the kinks. It's coming. And yeah, thank you for joining. And I hope everybody has a lovely, today is semi-sunny, wintry day. Aw, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Sorry for being a little bit late. Oops. Bye.